let's talk about The Gentleman. This is, I think, I would describe it as Guy Ritchie's first film in his like modern era. I feel like this era of Guy Ritchie films is mainly marked by the fact that all the films that have come out, I think there's been 5 right now within this decade. All 5 films from Guy Ritchie that have come out, starting with and then after The Gentleman in 2019, have been sort of marked with, oh, this is like a Guy Ritchie movie. We're selling this off of that, that this is a Guy Ritchie movie, and I think he really marks a style of like editing and just, he's always had his own clever dialogue and stuff like that, but I feel like there's a style to the modern Guy Ritchie film that is sort of set by this film. And this is, of course, him coming back to the non-linear gangster movie that he so famously created with Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. This is his first time coming back to this genre since Rock and Rolla. He had been making, more franchisey type things until this film came out, and I'm here to talk about this film. Despite that lengthy intro. So what is The Gentleman about? Well, now, I will say this is a very confusing movie. It's not as, I'd say, convoluted as, Rock and Rolla, nor is it, I think, as sort of satisfying to go back to as something like Snatch, which I've, like I said, I've seen, twice, or I watched for review, and then I watched it again a few days later. That's a really good movie that really does get better over time. The Gentleman is a bit different. This is about Matthew McConaughey, plays a American who moved to the UK back when he was in college. He moved to London when he was in college. Well, he didn't necessarily graduate, but he stayed in London because he loved the culture, and he found it really easy to sell marijuana there. And he created this whole sort of criminal empire based off of a small criminal empire, a small weed business off of selling marijuana to his sort of aristocratic friends. And this movie is about, he's a bit older, his wife is Mary from Downton Abbey, and him and his wife, or specifically he, wants to retire and maybe just live a seemingly normal life. He wants to retire and run off into the sunset with his wife. And before he does that, he would like to sell his weed to another, American. And this guy sort of, along with Henry Golding, sort of hatch a scheme to try to manipulate Mickey into selling his weed business for less, and possibly even sort of just do him dirty on part of the criminal underworld. And yeah, and of course this whole story is being told to us by Hugh Grant, who plays a private investigator named Flincher, who's this real scumbaggy butt crack type of guy, butt munch sort of dude, really scummy, and Hugh Grant plays it well, I think. And then of course there's also Colin Farrell, who's a boxing trainer, who sort of also gets wrapped up into the whole thing. And Charlie Hunnam is Matthew McConaughey's right hand guy. So Charlie Hunnam as Raymond, he gets wrapped up into it too, and so does of course Colin Farrell as that boxer trainer guy. And this is, I don't want to say it's convoluted, but it most certainly is confusing. There's a lot of sort of threads being thrown around, and this was my introduction to not Guy Ritchie's films, but this sort of style of storytelling. And I only really understand the story as much as I do because of TikTok. Randomly, I saw a video, because you know how the TikTok algorithm works. I randomly saw this video that this guy did of explaining, it just happens to be so, explaining the story of this film. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But like, I will say this is a really weak story. It has very funny moments. This is a very funny film. Not a lot of jokes are specifically coming back to me, of course, because this isn't as memorable as Snatch. But this is most certainly a really funny film. It's also has a lot of dark comedy in it, and I feel like I don't really like dark comedy all that much, but like, it is very much a dark comedy. It has funny moments, has funny beats, and I think it even has some great performances by like Colin Farrell. I think Matthew McConaughey does a good job. I think Charlie Hunnam does a good job, and of course, Hugh Grant is, I think, a true standout. But this film just feels so, I think, muddled in the storytelling department that it is, at least for me, a bit hard to enjoy because I love a good story. And I don't know, like, I do sort of, and I mean, this isn't like the bottom of a Guy Ritchie ranking that I would give, but this is most certainly like in the middle. And this isn't like my least favorite of the nonlinear Guy Ritchie gangster films, but I think it just has a very confusing story. And if you don't like the humor, because humor is subjective, and I do think that some of the jokes don't necessarily land, but if you don't vibe with the humor, you're not gonna like this movie at all. So go in with some caution. I did watch this, even though I have it on Blu-ray here. I did watch it on Netflix. I might maybe watch the Gentleman TV show, even though it's not exactly, it's just sort of like the name, and maybe some story beats are similar, but it's not necessarily like a sequel or an adaptation of this film in particular, which makes me a bit curious. But overall, this is a fine enough film that I think you should watch if you think you're gonna like it. But humor is subjective, and I just don't necessarily think that this movie, while being hilarious, does have some unfortunate humor. There's also some of that like classic like UK flavored bigotry that I guess was in some of his other work that I just didn't pick up on because I guess I hadn't seen things like Snatch or other things that I guess Guy Ritchie has made where he's done some of that racist stuff. So that was kind of intriguing to suss out. But anywho, this is an enjoyable enough film, an enjoyable enough watch, and I do lightly recommend it. So remember that God made you special. He loves you very much. So I hope you have a very lovely day. I hope you had a very lovely week. And as always, God bless y'all.